Imagine a time when the presence of God was symbolized by a sacred chest, the Ark of the Covenant. For decades, this powerful symbol had been kept away in the house of a man named Abinadab, its holiness untouched by the world. But now King David, full of excitement and ambition, decides it's time to bring the Ark back to the heart of Israel, Jerusalem. The air is filled with anticipation. Israel's people gather in great numbers, preparing for a grand procession, a moment that will be remembered for generations. The music begins, and a feeling of reverence sweeps through the crowd as they prepare for the sacred journey. Instruments play, feet tap in rhythm, and the people move with joy, eager to welcome the Ark back home. David, with the Ark placed on a newly built cart, watches as the oxen pull it forward. Beside the cart, Uzzah and his brother Ahiah walk, their steps in sync with the celebration. The mood is light, filled with dancing and singing, as the people pour their hearts out to God in praise. The Ark, glowing in the sunlight, moves through the dusty roads, pulled by the oxen. But as the procession continues through the rough terrain, something is about to happen. The joy of the crowd is about to meet a stark and powerful reminder of God's holiness. The crowd continues to celebrate, their voices rising with the wind, unaware of the moment that is quickly approaching. The oxen, steady and strong, continue to pull the sacred Ark along the rough path, and for a moment, everything seems perfect. The sun shines down, and the music plays on. But as the cart nears the threshing floor of Nakon, something happens, a sudden shift, a stumble. The oxen, heavy and tired, lose their footing on the uneven ground. The cart jerks, tilting sharply to one side. For a heartbeat, it feels like the Ark might fall, the sacred chest that holds the very presence of God. A gasp ripples through the crowd. Their joyful faces freeze, and a moment of horror strikes like a lightning bolt. Uzzah, standing beside the cart, feels the weight of the moment. His eyes widen in panic. Without thinking, his hand reaches out, towards the Ark, towards the very object that no one but the priests should touch. It's a split-second decision, a human instinct to protect what is precious. His hand moves faster than his thoughts, reaching for the Ark with a protective gesture, as if to shield it from disaster. The camera zooms in on Uzzah's hand, trembling as it touches the golden surface of the Ark. In that instant, time seems to stand still. His fingers make contact with the sacred object, and the crowd holds its breath. The sound of the music fades into silence, replaced by a heavy, unnerving stillness. Uzzah's actions, though driven by care, are about to set in motion something far beyond human understanding. In the blink of an eye, everything changes. The moment Uzzah's hand touches the Ark, there is a sudden sharp flash, brighter than the midday sun, overwhelming and powerful. It's as though the very heavens themselves have reacted. A divine force surges through the air, striking Uzzah where he stands. The Ark, which had been steady on the cart, seems to pulse with power, and in that instant, Uzzah falls, dead. The crowd's jubilant cheers turn to gasps of disbelief, and the music dies on the wind. Uzzah, the man who sought to protect the sacred Ark, is now lying motionless on the ground. King David, standing just a few steps away, freezes in horror. His face turns pale, his heart racing in confusion and fear. What just happened? Why did God strike down Uzzah, a man whose intentions were only to protect the Ark? David's mouth goes dry as the weight of the moment crashes down on him. The joyous procession, once filled with song and celebration, is now engulfed in an overwhelming silence. The people stand motionless, their eyes locked on the body of Uzzah. Some look on in shock, their faces twisted in confusion, others in fear, unable to comprehend what they have just witnessed. The air feels heavy, like a thick fog settling over the crowd. No one speaks, and for what seems like an eternity, the scene is frozen in time. Then, the weight of God's judgment becomes clear. The anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down for his irreverent act. Therefore he died there beside the Ark of God. 2 Samuel 6:7. David stands motionless, his heart torn between fury and fear. He had wanted the Ark to be returned to its rightful place in Jerusalem, but at what cost? This moment, a divine act of justice, has shaken him to his core. The Ark, once a symbol of joy and God's presence, now stands as a reminder of his holiness and the price of disobedience. The crowd remains still, their joy extinguished, replaced by a solemn reverence for the God whose power and judgment are beyond their understanding. As the reality of what has just happened sinks in, David stands paralyzed in shock. His heart races, caught in a whirlwind of anger and fear. Why did God strike down Uzzah, a man who meant no harm? His intentions were pure. He only wanted to protect the ark. David's mind reels, searching for an answer, but all he finds is confusion and a deep sense of injustice. How could God, his God, the one he had worshipped and trusted, do this? The joy of the procession, which had just moments ago filled the air, is now completely gone. The people, still frozen in disbelief, wait for their king's command. But David, torn by his emotions, makes a decision. He orders that the ark not be moved any further. Instead, it will stay right where Uzzah fell, at the house of Obed-Edom. The camera cuts to David's face, his brow furrowed, his eyes clouded with both anger and a growing fear of God's power. His lips tremble, caught between frustration and a dawning realization of the sacredness of what he is dealing with. The ark, once intended to be the centerpiece of the celebration, is now a symbol of God's fierce holiness, and David's moment of recklessness has led to disaster. The procession halts, and the crowd murmurs, unsure of what to do next. The journey stops abruptly. The ark is left at Obed-Edom's house, far from the city of Jerusalem. But the consequences of this decision unfold in an unexpected way. The ark, a source of death for Uzzah, brings prosperity to Obed-Edom's household. As the camera shifts to Obed-Edom's home, a change is evident. The once ordinary house now seems blessed. His crops flourish, his livestock multiply, and his family is filled with joy. It is as if the very presence of the ark has turned his life into one of abundance. The people speak in hushed tones, realizing the power the ark holds, not only in judgment but in blessing as well. David, hearing of these blessings, begins to reflect. The ark, though a symbol of divine judgment, also carries the potential for unimaginable blessings for those who honor God. The contrast between Obed-Edom's prosperity and Uzzah's sudden death weighs heavily on David's heart. As the days pass, the story of the ark resting at Obed-Edom's house begins to spread throughout Israel. What started as a moment of tragedy begins to take a new turn. The ark, once a symbol of God's anger, now becomes a source of blessings. A quick cut reveals Obed-Edom's household thriving in ways no one could have imagined. His crops grow tall and bountiful, his cattle multiply, and his family flourishes in health and joy. The land around his home seems to prosper in the presence of the ark. It is clear to all who witness it that God's favor is upon him. The presence of the ark, an object of such power, has transformed Obed-Edom's life. His prosperity is a living testament to the blessings that come when God's presence is respected and revered. Meanwhile, David, still reeling from the earlier events, hears of Obed-Edom's newfound fortune. At first, it seems like an impossibility. How could the same ark that brought judgment on Uzzah now bring such incredible blessings to another household? But David, in his deep contemplation, begins to realize the truth. God's presence, while holy and fearsome, also brings great favor to those who honor it. David's heart begins to soften. He understands now more than ever that God's holiness cannot be taken lightly. But he also sees that with reverence, there is a great reward, blessing, abundance, and divine favor. David knows what he must do. With renewed determination, he decides that the ark must be brought to Jerusalem once more, but this time with great care. He will not repeat his previous mistake. This time, the ark will be carried with respect and reverence for its holiness. David orders the proper preparations, ensuring that only the priests, as commanded by God, will touch the ark. David is humbled. The joy and excitement that once filled him now have a different flavor, one of respect, awe, and a deep understanding of the holiness of God. He is no longer the king who seeks to use the ark for his own glory. Now, he seeks to honor it as a symbol of God's presence among his people. The journey to Jerusalem will continue, but this time with the right heart. After days of reflection, the time has come. David is no longer the same man who first sought to bring the ark to Jerusalem in excitement and haste. His heart has been changed. and now he understands the gravity of what he is about to do. This time the ark will be treated with the reverence it deserves. David, humbled by the events that have unfolded, orders a new plan. He calls for the priests to be the ones to carry the ark, as was instructed in the law of Moses. No longer will the ark be placed on a cart pulled by oxen. Instead, the priests will carry it on their shoulders, using the poles that were made specifically for this purpose, as prescribed by God. The lesson has been learned. Only those who are consecrated, those who are prepared and set apart for this sacred task, can handle the ark. The procession resumes, but this time it is different. The atmosphere has shifted. There is still joy, still music, but now there is a deep, reverent respect. The people understand that this is no ordinary event. The ark, the symbol of God's very presence, is being brought to the heart of Israel. The crowd is more subdued, their excitement tempered by awe. They watch as the priests in their holy garments carefully carry the ark through the streets, their movements steady and purposeful. David, standing before the procession, watches with a heart full of gratitude. His earlier anger and fear are replaced with a sense of joy and awe, for he knows that he is finally doing this right. With every step the priests take, David's heart swells with a deep love for God, and he cannot contain his joy. In the presence of the ark, David begins to dance. But this is no ordinary dance. It is a dance of praise and worship, a dance that comes from the depths of his soul. With all his might, he dances before the Lord, unashamed, caught up in the beauty and holiness of the moment. His joy is infectious, and the people around him begin to join in, praising God with their voices and instruments. David's body moves with the music, and in that moment, he is not a king, but a servant of God, honoring him with all that he is. This procession is not just a return of the ark, it is a return to reverence, to the proper understanding of God's presence. David is fully aware now of the sacredness of the ark and the need to approach God with respect and humility. As the ark nears its final destination, the city of Jerusalem, David's joy is complete, for he has honored God in the way he deserves. The day has finally arrived. The Ark of the Covenant is entering Jerusalem, the city David has longed to make the center of God's presence. As the procession winds its way through the gates of the city, the atmosphere is charged with excitement and reverence. The people line the streets, their faces filled with awe, understanding the significance of this moment. The ark is carefully carried into the tent that has been specially prepared for it, a place of honor where it will reside. This is no ordinary tent, it is a sacred dwelling, designed with reverence for the very presence of God. The people of Israel are witnessing the fulfillment of God's promise to be with them, and they understand the weight of this moment. David, standing before the ark, offers sacrifices to God. His heart is full of gratitude, and with a deep sense of humility, he praises God for allowing the ark to return to its rightful place. The smell of burning offerings rises into the air, a sign of Israel's devotion and reverence. David's prayers are not of personal glory, but of thanksgiving for the holiness of God and the blessings he has bestowed upon his people. As David offers his sacrifices, the people of Israel erupt in joy. Their hearts are filled with praise, and their voices rise in unison, thanking God for bringing the ark back to the center of their worship. The sound of trumpets, singing and dancing fills the city as the people rejoice, knowing that God's presence is once again among them. This is more than just a return of a sacred object. It is a return to the very heart of their faith. The ark, now safely in Jerusalem, symbolizes God's continued presence, guidance, and favor. The people understand that the ark is not just a physical object, but a constant reminder of God's holiness, power, and love. Their joy is not just for the ark itself, but for the recognition that God, in His grace, has chosen to dwell with them once more. Now that the journey has ended and the ark is safely placed in Jerusalem, it's time to reflect on the powerful lessons this story teaches us. Lessons that go beyond the pages of ancient scripture and speak to us today. Lesson 1. The sanctity of God's commands. Uzzah's tragic death was not the result of a sinful act but a violation of God's direct command. Uzzah had the purest intentions. He only wanted to protect the ark, to keep it from falling. But in that moment, he disregarded the sanctity of God's laws. The ark was holy, and only those specifically chosen by God could touch it. Uzzah's disobedience, even with the best of motives, reminds us that God's commands must be followed to the letter. Lesson 2. Obedience over good intentions. No matter how noble our intentions may be, obedience to God's commands is paramount. Uzzah's story is a clear warning that good intentions, while admirable, cannot override God's laws. We may not always understand the reasons behind His commands, but God values our obedience more than our personal reasoning. His ways are higher than ours, and when we choose to follow them, we honor His sovereignty and wisdom. Lesson 3. God's holiness cannot be taken lightly. The ark was not just a box made of gold. It symbolized God's presence, His holiness. Uzzah, in his attempt to steady the ark, treated it as if it were just an object, failing to recognize the gravity of God's holiness. This event underscores the truth that God's holiness is not to be treated casually. We must approach Him with awe, reverence, and respect. When we stand before God, we are standing before something infinitely greater than ourselves, and we must honor that greatness in everything we do. Lesson 4. Blessings in God's presence. While Uzzah's disobedience led to his death, Obed-Edom's reverence for the ark led to unexpected blessings. For 3 months, the ark remained in Obed-Edom's house, and during that time, his household prospered in ways beyond measure. The blessings that flowed from God's presence were a direct result of Obed-Edom's respect for the ark. When we honor God and His presence, we open ourselves to His blessings. Obedience to God's commands brings prosperity, not just in material wealth, but in peace, joy, and fulfillment. Reason for the event. This incident is not just a historical account. It is a warning. It highlights the seriousness of following God's instructions and the consequences of failing to do so. Uzzah's death serves as a stark reminder that, even when our hearts are in the right place, disobedience to God's commands brings inevitable consequences. God is not a passive observer. He is active and just in His dealings with His people. This story calls us to reflect on how we approach God's commands and how seriously we take His instructions. We cannot pick and choose which parts of His will we want to obey. The ark's journey to Jerusalem teaches us that when we honor God with obedience and reverence, His presence brings not only holiness and power, but also blessings and peace. As we come to the end of this journey, let's take a moment to pause and reflect on what we've learned. The story of Uzzah is not just a historical event. It is a powerful reminder for us today. What does this story teach us about obedience to God's will in our own lives? How often do we, like Uzzah, act out of good intentions, but forget to fully honor God's commands? Are we truly listening to the instructions He's given us? Or are we, too, sometimes disregarding His holiness in the rush of our own plans? Let's take a moment to ask ourselves, are we truly honoring God's commands in every area of our lives? In our relationships, our work, and our daily choices, do we treat God's presence with the reverence it deserves? As we reflect on Uzzah's story, let us consider how we approach God's holiness. Are we taking His commands seriously? Or do we sometimes take them lightly, as if they are optional? It is time to commit ourselves to live with a renewed sense of reverence, obedience, and respect for the God who is holy, just, and merciful. Let this story challenge us to align our lives more closely with His will, knowing that in doing so, we will experience His blessings, His peace, and His favor. Take this moment to reflect, and let your heart be open to living with the honor and obedience that God deserves. Let's make a commitment today to approach Him with reverence, to follow His commands, and to trust in His wisdom and grace.